right, well, thank you all for being here. So yeah, my name is Michael Gaspari. I'm an adjunct faculty member at the Frost School of Music at University of Miami and also at the Miami-Dade College. And my project is called Noise and Buttons. It's an inclusive music making app and teaching program for early music education, specifically geared towards neurodivergent communities. So, just a little background about me. Like I said, it's about the neurodivergent community. I am someone who is autistic, and I am very much an advocate and supporter of autistic people. And over the years, I have actively engaged in advocacy efforts, using social media and all of that. This was something that really gained traction during the COVID-19 pandemic. So yeah, my dedication just to the disabled community in general, right, which obviously encompasses way more than just neurological differences, but also physical differences and stuff like that, all right, it has allowed me to teach students in various age groups, you know, from preschool all the way to high school, and now college level, that all have different, you know, disabilities and stuff like that. So the place that I was working at a lot in New Jersey, which is where I'm originally from, was the Mercer County Special Services School District. And it was here that I got inspired to develop a concept for a accessible music making app. So working with the students, the biggest thing I noticed was that they needed ways to interact with software or computers, right, that was accessible. So one of the most accessible things that you could use is button, right? Just simple button, right? Press it, does something, right? So we have keyboards on our computers, we have the mouse, those are all buttons, right? But layouts can be confusing, and also for people with, you know, motor skills where their motor skills aren't as refined, they're not going to be able to really interact with this stuff easily. So I saw teachers utilizing buttons that were just connected through USB to control really simple things like flash games, stuff like that. And I thought, what if this could control a really complicated synthesizer? And that was the question. Could a complex synthesizer be controlled with the same simplicity as push buttons? And I believe so. So, what is Noise and Buttons? It is a pioneering music education project that aims to make music education more accessible to the neurodivergent to the neurodivergent community. And although it's open to all, right, it could be used as a tool for anyone to learn music. It is very much catered towards the neurodivergent community. So the idea is that you have 4 buttons, and they're color-coded with red, yellow, green, and blue. So tempo is red, rhythm is yellow, timbre is green, and harmony is blue. Now, the reason I chose these 4 aspects of music over, you know, there's many more, obviously, was because they were broad enough to be able to encompass, you know, multiple subcategories of aspects. So, for example, rhythm could encompass, you know, groove, feel, you know, swung versus straight rhythm, all that kind of stuff. So these 4 aspects provide the fundamental building blocks of music, and then they embody a more specific concepts that users are capable of manipulating in the app. So this was the prototype app. Like a lot of the projects that were presented here, I also used Max. So this was originally what the interface looked like, very alpha, you know, and although there's a lot of stuff that is showing very complex, you know, actions that are happening to the music, the interface is what is simple, and that's the most important thing. So starting in 2019, I used the prototype to add features, and I also built a physical button box that's pictured here. And this was also utilized so I could go into actually trying to use this with students. So teaching with Noise and Buttons. So complementing the app is the Noise and Buttons musical learning program, which was a comprehensive curriculum that I developed by my experience teaching. So I was fortunate enough to be able to teach neurodivergent students in a special services school district, the same one I was talking about before, so MCSSSD. And in the summer of 2022, I started to introduce the software and the hardware. And at that time, I was just using it as maybe some supplemental, you know, activities for the students to be able to engage in. But it was in 2023 that I really took this to the next level and developed a comprehensive learning program, the Noise and Buttons musical learning program, and a curriculum around it. So the curriculum, it involves slideshows, right? So actually talking about, okay, what is tempo? What is rhythm, right? Why are they important, right? And also ideas of how these aspects of music could change and convey different emotional context, right? Because obviously we as humans can equate music, you know, based off of feeling, right? And like, so really, really basic example, tempo, fast songs, you know, kind of give us a little more energy, slow songs, maybe not as much, but everyone's different. So I always encouraged my students to give me what they thought, right? Because not everyone's gonna say the same thing. So I'm not gonna say fast music will make you happy, because that's not gonna be for everyone, right? Could be too intense for some people. So had that, interactive videos as well, where it's actually showing the app working and is encouraging the students to grab a drum, grab a keyboard, and actually try these concepts out, right? Of course, the app. And I also included jam sessions so I can allow the students, you know, to collaborate. And, you know, group activity can be a little bit hard for the autistic community specifically. So it's a good thing to be able to, you know, allow just fun process music making, right? In that sort of way. So accessibility as well, right? No loud volumes, no flashing lights, all that kind of stuff. Working with students who need accessibility. So that is also another really important aspect. All right, good on time. Here's some pictures just of, you know, the time I was teaching there. There's some of the students, you know, jamming on some instruments together, having a good time. This was the classroom. On the left, you can see the my little, you know, makeshift projector set up. And you can see some of the students, you know, engaged, learning about music together. There's also a little video of me doing a little harmony exercise. So I was able to, you know, incorporate the colors and allow students to basically have like little xylophones. I put those same stickers that are pictured here on the xylophones. And I just kept changing the chords, and I was like, all right, play this pattern, play that pattern. And they did pretty well from what you could hear in that, right? And then here's another example of me, of a student using the app. You can see all the visual changes on screen, which I'm going to show the app to you now. Or first I'm gonna do this. So the result of the musical learning program, or the results I got, basically worked really well, and the students were really engaged and were able to like very much equate, you know, like, okay, if we're talking about tempo, or, you know, thinking about the color red, so equating, you know, color to aspects, which, you know, for the autistic community is a really important thing, and we really do run on analogies, so that was something that was useful for the students. And they were also able to take these aspects, and we made little micro songs for each class. It was a really fun time. One of the students actually made a cover of a TV show theme song that he really liked. He already had a little bit of music knowledge, but he was able to kind of help with me coach the other students and make this really fun little cover of the song, you know, and they were just, you know, playing the instruments, and, you know, sometimes even though they didn't actually know how to play the instruments, like, you know, like in the way that, you know, a trained musician would, or even, you know, someone who's a beginner would, they were still able to come up with interesting ideas by utilizing the program that I built. And the variation between the classes was astonishing. It was wonderful. All right, so now's the fun part. So from prototype to web application. So this is a web application that is currently available, and the way I did this was I utilized Rainbow, and which is really good for me because I wouldn't say programming is my #1 skill, but I did have to teach myself JavaScript to do this. So I used the JavaScript export target. So that was one of the first main things I did. Next big thing was redefining the step sequencer, because I wanted to build something that could play really, really tight music and be able to convey complex rhythm. So this is the rainbow patch. I'm not gonna get too in depth with everything, but everything's color coded for my ease of use. But if we go here, this is the step sequencer. Yeah. So instead of having 16 steps like most, right? Like a TR-808 or something like that, as 4. Because the idea is that you can take beats and make subdivisions. So divide the beat by 4, divide the beat by 3. You could get triplets. So I only built in the 16th notes and the triplets, but I can build in any sort of polyrhythm. So quintuplets, septuplets, dodecatuplets, whatever you want, right? So you can, with this system, I've been able to really unlock a lot of interesting ideas and introduce students to things that maybe they're not used to on their little like beep boop toys, right? That, you know, they might probably used to playing with, right? So that's a really big thing. Next thing is also the multi-purpose push button, right? Because you don't have to just push a button down, right? You can also press and hold it. That can create a new, control. So technically with 4 buttons, I can have 8 controls. And if I wanted to incorporate double click, I could have 12. So there are a lot of things. And then building a clean user interface. So I'm going to show the interface now. This is what it looks like. So everything's color coded and vertically stacked to show tempo, rhythm, timbre, and harmony. So let's turn it on and have some fun. So I'm first going to show what it's like to use buttons. Yeah. And if you want, there's a little kick drum in here too that you could use to make some fun little, like, I don't know, EDM music if you want. But so if you press and hold the red button, it will increase the tempo, right? But you could also click it to get a random tempo. Now the max tempo is 140, so it's going to go down now. So it'll basically just bounce between this forever until I let go. Now let's get the yellow button. So now we have random rhythms, right? So it can do dotted rhythms, it can do triplets, like example, like shown here, right? It's all random, right? But you can, click it as much as you want, get stuff that you want. Now the press and hold for the yellow button actually doesn't affect the rhythm, but more of the articulation. So now I'm pressing and holding, and the decay is long, so every note is held out. And if I keep holding it, the attack will now get slow. So now it's more accustomed to something like a violin, right? Like a string instrument that has slower attack. So let me set that back there. I like it there. So the green button has some effects to make it easier to understand for students who may not understand vibrato versus delay. I called it echo and wobble. And by clicking this button, you can see that there is the amount of it, which is, or the feedback, which is where the fader is. But then, depending on the opacity of the actual bar, that shows the wet-dry mix. Right? And then by pressing and holding, you can turn up the brightness. That bottom one is the resonance of the filter. And then the blue button is blue, or it's harmony. So now I'm changing the scale of the random notes they're playing. Or you could turn off voices. So now it's just the bass, middle, high, a mix of bass and middle, bass and high, and middle and high. Now, I have another cool implementation that I most recently added. So this is using a controller. So I could do the same thing by utilizing, the layout of a controller, and now I have more control, right? So I don't have a lot of time to actually show the every control, but I'll just kind of play it a little bit basically, right? So turn up, you can use the right joystick to go through the circle of fifths, and then there's feedback controls and all that, and you can do stuff like this, right? So, yeah. All right, let me speed through this last part. So, the future for noise and buttons. I believe that this app can go in a direction where it could basically be used, with different modes, right? So students maybe could utilize like a melody generator, a beat maker by using these simple controls, and then people could collaborate and jam together, playing music together by syncing their apps together into maybe like a local server or something. So that is a really big thing for me. And also building a library of different sounds besides the one I have. And using devices like the Xbox controller. So yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have 4.5 minutes for the question. Any question? Yes,
I have multiple questions. Maybe I'll start with the first one.
Sure.
Which is the choice of the interface, the button, you know, in terms of the form factor.
Yeah.
The size of it. You know, you mentioned about the color, which completely makes sense. But you know, what was the reason? You know, as opposed to you know, small buttons, right? For example. Or was it a robustness, like also factored in, like, you know, it's not going to break, you know, kind of thing? What are some of the design principles that went into choosing that particular kind of button?
Yeah, I'm definitely not someone who like has a lot of experience like building things. That was kind of, you know, a little fun little project I did with my dad at the time during the lockdowns. But the reason I did want to make it really big was because for some students, you know, it's a little bit harder. Maybe they don't have like that really precise control of being able to, you know, like push something that's really small, like a key on a keyboard, right? So making them big allowed for, you know, students maybe who have, you know, defects in their hands, which I've worked with a lot of students who have that, be able to like kind of push it down like that, stuff like that. So that was definitely a factor that came in. Through testing it, there were some students who don't have a lot of physical strength who actually weren't able to press it down all the way. So that's something I noticed and something I'm definitely considering when building more hardware for this to make different options available. But yeah, thank you.
The second question, can I?
Yes.
I have is, have you considered adding a visual component to you know, this whole experience? Because, you know, I know lots of autistic students are interested in the details, right, sometimes, and then trying to really understand what's going on with, you know, for example, what's happening with the music when you interact with them, especially, right?
Yeah, definitely. So that is something that I was met with when I was working with the students, because we even had some students who were deaf who need visual representation. So I had to kind of work around that because I didn't have it built in yet, but it is something I want to incorporate for sure.
And how would you make that visual experience be, right? Like what kind of design?
I think there's definitely like two ways to think about it, at least for me. One would be like actually showing like the parameters of the synth, and the other would probably be maybe a little bit more of an abstract format, and maybe both will work, you know, having the option, because again, options are always, I think, the best for something like this. So yeah, that's probably how I would approach that. Mm-hmm.
Can I ask one more question?
Anyone has any other question from this side?
Oh, there's someone over there.
I will take this one, then I will come back to you, please.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Can I ask one thing that I thought that it's very interesting because you can manipulating the just very good point of the complexity of the musical. So what's going to happen when you push the border? For example, you added the different functionality for single push and long push. And of course, we can add more complexity. For example, if we add just one more modifier key,
Yeah.
shift key or the complex
Shift key, yeah.
And how do you think that there is there any kind of the threshold of the complexity that the children can manipulate?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've definitely actually gotten that exact feedback before. The reason I haven't done it yet is because I think the idea of at least having this be the most basic form is very core to the experience. But it's definitely something that I would want to consider down the line. And, you know, I'm in the process of building or basically capabilities for it to use more interfaces and stuff like that. So yeah.
Now we have time for one more question.
Okay.
You can.
It's okay.
I was gonna say, great presentation.
Thank you.
I'm really glad that you mentioned the accessible controllers by Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
I've done some work with them myself, and I'm wondering what the mapping looks like on the interface. Like, if I had any controller, would I need to go into the Max patch or contact you to do that mapping, or is there an option on the web for me to be like, that's that button, that's that button?
So my answer to that is that I'm actually in the process of trying to build something that can automatically detect it, because right now it's mapped to a Nintendo Switch Pro controller.
Yeah.
So, and that's the only controller I have on hand. So I have to actually buy the controllers, or like have a friend lend them to me and be able to actually figure out what the mapping is. And because these actually do have indexes with the way JavaScript uses the gamepad API, it does say this is a Nintendo Switch Pro controller. So all I'd have to do is just take that information, and it would basically be like a basic if statement of if that, then this mapping.
Yeah.
Right?
So it would be automatic. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's great.
We'll take last question.
Thank you. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice.
Please tell your name and affiliation, please.
Sorry?
Name and affiliation, sir.
My name is Victor Jones. I teach at North Central College near Chicago.
Oh, awesome.
I actually went over them, so
Nice.
agree to connect with you later. But,
Okay, for sure.
I think this was really fun. I really have a fascinating way to kind of approach it from a less is more kind of way, because you have 4 buttons and then finding out what possibilities you can do with them. When you transition to the controller, is there any temptation to make it more and more complex? Does that lead you into involved? Because like the many times I found it became very, very difficult after I was trying to cram too many things into one interface, and then things get complicated and it becomes difficult to use. But did you ever contend with that kind of difficulty?
I definitely went through a lot of iterations with how to map the buttons, because they're all different. That is a tough thing. But yeah, I think the reason I even wanted to have this as an option is because I want there to be the capability of people who maybe do want something a little more advanced than the buttons, right? For early music education, maybe people who have a little bit of music background already, to be able to use something a little more complex, because the buttons are all random, right? This has a little bit more precise control.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you so much.
For your presentation. Now, our final presentation for this session and ICMC 2020-25.